It's Samira from sacredsoulpractice.com logging on to say hi. Welcome to day 18 of Safe Trauma Practice, the live experience. And today we are talking about you are worthy and why we believe that we're not. Let me just make sure we are streaming well online in all the places. Let me know how you're doing when you pop on, how your day's going. If you're on the replay, hashtag replay, so I know that you're here, and we will get into it. Just trying to. What I was trying to do did not work. Enough with that. Let's dive into it. I would love to know what your a journey has been in a few words or as many as you want, to be honest. Um, what's your experience been like with really accepting that you are worthy and um, really accepting that? And so let's share below. I'd love to hear it. I also want to just share, my own experience. Sometimes that can be really powerful to hear what someone else is going through around it. And what I want to say about that is simply sometimes we can be so, you know, successful, accomplished. We can have evidence that what we think is not true. We can have evidence that we are worthy, even when we don't feel worthy. We can have evidence that um, we do not need to earn worthiness. And when we feel inadequate or simply unworthy, all of that evidence, all that we know, can go out the window. And so that was my experience for so long. And I couldn't even put words to it, right? I didn't even have the words to say, um, like, I don't feel worthy. I didn't even know, like, that was a thing. All I knew was no matter what I did, how much I accomplished, how hard I worked, it wasn't enough. It didn't feel like enough. It didn't feel like I was ever going to get it right, right? It didn't feel like I was ever going to get there, wherever there was. First, I thought it was a degree, and I worked so hard. It took me forever to finish my undergraduate degree for so many reasons. Um, I was putting myself through school. It was really hard. I worked full time. I went to school full time. Come to find out, right? I had um, ADD and didn't realize it. And so school was so hard for me when high school hadn't been as hard. It was still very much a struggle, but it wasn't as hard as college. And so um, I kept getting these like mysterious illnesses. I had to have surgeries, all sorts of things. And it just felt like a war in so many ways. And for so long, I felt like I'm never going to do this. What's the point? I had given up at one point, and one of my dearest friends, um, who was making more money than me, right, at this time, without a degree, right? She shared time is going to go by either way. So if you love this, and clearly you do, she's like, you support everybody in your life. She's like, you're my therapist right now, today. She's like, if this is really your passion, of course you should go and do this for a living. Get the degree and do it. Time's going to pass either way. And so I love her to this day for saying that because it was so true. Time was going to pass either way, and it was my passion, and I was meant to do this kind of work. And I had given up a little bit. And so even when I think back to that time in my life, it's like for so long I didn't think I could do it in general. There was this little part of me inside who like knew I could. She was guiding me, right? Like this higher self version of me knew where the path was going to lead. But at the time, I had no idea where the path was going to lead. And I had no idea that the challenges I was having were connected to worth, right? And so, for so many people, women especially, we don't even realize that we don't feel worthy. Sometimes it's simply um, is based around this idea of like, if I were better, if I could do more, if I produce more, if I accomplish more, then I'll feel worthy. And what began to happen in my life, I began to create, by the grace of God, this life that I loved, that I felt proud of, that most of the time I felt worthy of. And I still didn't feel fulfilled inside. And I still didn't feel like I was enough. And it wasn't until I began to do my own deeper healing journey, my own trauma recovery journey, that I began to realize that I did not, in fact, feel worthy. And by this point, I had learned so many like new agey things, personal development, self help things that are amazing, right? And so helpful. And I was doing all the things and still didn't feel worthy. I was doing all of the things, affirmations and just so many things, the books, the practices, trying to do self-care as best I could, writing down the things, journaling, right? Doing everything but standing on my head, though yoga was going to come in a few years. I just didn't know it yet. Um, and I really began to take in this idea of like, when is it gonna be enough? When am I gonna get there? Is there ever a there to get to? And I began to feel frustrated. And at this point, I realized something needed to give. There was nothing externally, there was nothing outside of me that was going to make me feel worthy. I realized at that point, because I am very intuitive and I have cultivated the courage to go within, that that indeed was the process. It was going to be me going within and figuring out, feeling into, coming into myself to tap in to whatever this worth thing was, right? I really didn't even have an idea of what it was. And so I share this backstory to say we can say all of the right things. We can say all of the beautiful affirmations, and I love affirmations. And when we don't fully or at all believe it inside of us, when there's so much doubt and we're out of alignment with it, it's harder to buy into it. And so it can often be that when we tap into admitting and getting honest about, I don't believe I am worthy. Let me write on that. Let me journal on that. All of the reasons why I don't think that I am worthy. Looking up the definition of worthy, right? Of worth, of really feeling into what does it mean for you? What do you feel when you hear the word worth? If you allowed yourself to say out loud, I, stating your name, am worthy, what does that bring up for you and really sit with that. That can be such good information in your path of going deeper around what's holding you back around your worth and your value around, is it important to you to even feel worthy? For me, I didn't feel worthy, and no matter what I did, I couldn't create that feeling. And a part of me, I think, deep down thought I was broken. I didn't realize that at the time that we are each born worthy, and nothing about that fact changes even when life happens, even when terrible things happen, even when trauma happens, even when we make terrible decisions, even when we do things that we're not proud of and that we're not in integrity around, or feeling just we don't feel proud of them, right? Even when these things happen, we are still worthy if we can give ourselves permission to know that and accept that. You are not the things that you've done, and you're not the things that have been done to you. But when we don't consciously accept that, it can very much feel like, because this trauma happened, because this heartbreak happened, because this abuse happened, because I fell short here, because I've never been able to get this right over there, I'm not worthy. I'll never be worthy. When really, worth is not something, it's not a tangible thing. You can't take this pen that's like, let's just say it's a finger. It's a bad example. Worth is not like a tangible thing. You can't like take it out of you, though sometimes life can make us feel that way. The crapshoot that is trauma feels like a Mack truck worth of sand that gets poured over us, to the point where we are separated from our worth. Sometimes when my kiddo and honestly, even when I go by myself, I actually went with a friend. It's the wonderful, magical priestess that supported me in my inner child healing ceremony. As we were leaving that ceremony on the beach, she dropped her shoe, one of her flip flops, by accident. And I wanted to just go back quick and look for it, because I realized that she had it like we were almost at the exit. And so I went back too far. And as I was coming back, I was thinking, maybe I didn't really see that. Maybe it's not here. As I'm fixing to leave, I find her shoe and I'm like, yay, so happy about that. And then I begin to realize that's what happens with our worth sometimes. It's like we're on our path in life. These terrible things happen. We feel like we've lost it. We can be searching for it without realizing it's right here. It never went away, it never was lost. Life was just poured on top of it. And sifting through that and taking off these 1,000 pounds of crap is how we rediscover it. It was never taken away from us, that no one can take it away. And it's our God-given inherent truth that we are in fact worthy no matter what. And so I would love to share with you the truth that you are so worthy, no matter what's happened or what you've done, that you're important, that you have a reason to be on this earth, that you matter to so many people, even if you don't feel like that. And I believe that if you're on this earth, you have something to do here, something important, something worthwhile. And it doesn't have to be um, being the next Oprah, right? We all have different missions on this earth. But what you're being called to do is important. It's worthy of your commitment and your devotion, and you're not giving up on yourself or of it simply because you feel unworthy. You're not. And it's okay if it takes you some time to fill into that. It took me years. And so, a lot of the work that we're going to do in this round of the program, Safe Trauma Practice, we're going to support you in reconnecting with your own inherent worth, working through the blocks around it, the way that we feel blocked off from it, right? So when we do worth work, we really tap into the things, the stories, the betrayals, the misunderstandings that we are not, in fact, worthy. And oftentimes, when we just tune into that on um, a conscious, unconscious, subconscious level, we begin to unravel those stories. Hi, Carrie. It's good to see you. We begin to unravel those stories and we're able to really unpack it in this sophisticated way that doesn't take 20 years of therapy, though I love therapy, to unravel. We're able to go to the parts of ourselves that are holding these wounds around our worth and accept that it was simply a misunderstanding. Luana, hi, I'm so happy you're here. We're able to unpack it and really accept that it was a misunderstanding. Sometimes when we experience trauma and betrayal and just like disappointment, we create these beliefs around it that say, I'm not worthy. And for so long, one of my core stories had been, I'm not worthy because if I were, these terrible things would have not happened. And that was a childhood belief, that was a wounded belief that was created out of trauma. And the challenge with childhood beliefs and childhood coping skills and defense mechanisms is that they're not true as in factual necessarily. It's a feeling, and feelings are not facts. And when we identify with a feeling and when we make it concrete and like permanent, we create a neural pathway in our brain around this false belief. So that's why so much of trauma recovery is really shifting those neural networks and those neural pathways in our mind around thoughts and beliefs. A belief is just a thought that we keep thinking. So to shift it, we have to shift what we're thinking, and not simply what we're thinking, but we have to dismantle the belief that was grounded in trauma in the first place and recreate a new belief from our place of wholeness versus the one that was created in our woundedness, in our pain, in our trauma, right? And so, so much of trauma recovery is recovering ourselves, our wholeness, our whole selves, our inherently worthy selves. Luana, yes. And interesting that you use the word uproot the belief. It is that, but also there's no need to take like a shovel and go in and dig anything out. We can simply become aware of these inner workings between our nervous systems. We can go into the conscious mind, the unconscious, and the subconscious, identify the misunderstandings, and simply unravel them, right? By changing our relationship with that traumatic belief, right? And so it is uprooting it, but in a softer, um, more elegant way. And our nervous system has such a more gentle response when we unravel things versus uprooting them. The nervous system in some ways is like a young child. They don't like fast, quick, in a hurry, just like abrupt kinds of things. Most children need a little bit slower unpacking of things, why we're doing this, where we're going. They need extra time to gather their favorite little toy or the snack or whatever. So there needs to be spaciousness and allowing and permission to be one's full self, as eccentric or eclectic as we can be, right? As kiddos, as adults, our nervous systems often need that same thing, like spaciousness, gentleness, um, being held, because so often we don't get that as children unless you're lucky enough, blessed enough to have gentle parenting, conscious parenting, and many of us who um, are, I think, like over 25 at this point, didn't really have that. It wasn't really a thing, then the way that it is now. And we didn't have the same awareness and like value and priority on nervous system and attachment and um, creating healthy attachments early to prevent developmental trauma. And so many of us who are 25 and older, right? Many of us are, I certainly am, are healing these traumas that happened. And many of us had multiple traumas that happened on top of each other to create like a PTSD. That's our puppy. It's just sister. It's just sister. It's just sister. Relax, baby. It's just sister. Um, I I know. I'm on live though. When we are able to identify that when traumas stack upon each other, it can become post traumatic stress. And oftentimes, many of us had that as children, and we did not realize it. Thank you, babe. Many of our caregivers did not realize that was even a thing. And so, what was childhood PTSD, which was my case, can quickly become PTSD in our adulthood when it's not resolved, when it's not cared for and treated and managed and really integrated. And when we have early trauma, so really like birth to 5, I really think it's like birth to 8. Those younger years are when the neural pathways are really developing, and that prefrontal cortex doesn't have, it's not developed. And so everything is going into the subconscious and unconscious mind as truth. And so as we grow and develop, and that amygdala develops more, as well as the prefrontal cortex, we have more of a filter. We can start to identify that thing that happened to me was bad, but I'm not bad. From like birth to age 8, we cannot identify that whatever is happening um, isn't just bad, it's that it's making us feel bad, but we are in fact not bad. So as we develop more, we're able to make those associations um, and differentiations. When we're younger, we can't. So as an adult, when we start to have these beliefs, these stuck points, these triggers, we set these goals for ourselves, and we're doing all the right things, right? Like selfhelp.com, all the things, and we're not meeting the goal. Oftentimes it's because we don't realize these old neural pathways, these old belief systems are still in place, even though we've thrown this giant like carpet over it and we're trying to build on top of it. All that stuff is underneath it, and it's causing like an energetic mismatch to what we're wanting versus what we're allowing and we're giving ourselves permission to receive. So it's not just mindset, it's not just positive thinking. There's a real neuroscience to healing, and we're going to go deeper into that in the Safe Trauma Practice certification so that you're better able to work through that on your own for your own personal development and with your clients, your students, your communities that you're serving, and all of the beautiful ways that you serve them. And so let me catch up on the comments. Lovely Luana, she says that's so good. Deeper awareness. I love this possibility. Yes, yes to possibility and awareness. You're so welcome. Carrie, I know you know. We did not have all of the um, learnings and education that we have now around neuroscience, around development, around the neurobiology of trauma. And that led some of us to believe that like we had to fix ourselves, that we were broken, that we had to fix something. Many people experienced well meaning caregivers um, that were trying to like make us better, and that sometimes can make us think that we were broken and needed to be fixed. And so lots of misunderstandings there. Luana said, never heard of most of those things until the last 2 or 5 years. Exactly. And so I went to graduate school, I guess, like 10 or 12 years ago now, I forget. And we were just learning about a lot of these things as like everyday people and how we interact and how we um, implement these things in just our everyday life. So lots of like scholars and PhDs were aware of this, but it wasn't common knowledge, and we didn't go super deep into that in my graduate program, and many of my friends and peers who are therapists, right, didn't either. This is all lots of time and lots of money spent to gain these skills and understandings, and hundreds of hours reading like tons of books. I read trauma books for sport. There have been times where my own trauma therapist has been like, no more trauma books for like 3 months, like no more for now. And I would always like revolt, but sometimes we need our system to have a break when we are both a survivor and also a teacher and medicine woman of the work. That's a lot of energy to hold. And so I have gained these skills and these knowledge bases in so many ways to heal myself, because my experience was, I think I became a therapist to heal myself. And in doing that work, I realized that I had this gift to be able to help others do the same. And so much of it for me is like learning why things work the way that they do, learning how our mind really works and how our mind, body, and spirit need to work together to create the trifecta that we're wanting. So many times I thought it was all mind, or all spirit, or even all body. And all three of those, can you turn it down just a little bit, babe? Thank you. All of those are important and they all work really well, but they work the best and most efficiently together as one system. And when we keep them separate, things do not integrate the way that they should. And what we can find easily is that we're not always taught how to help them work together like a well oiled machine. We're taught lots of things about the mind, lots of things about the body, and lots of things about the spirit, right? Most of us, but they're not in this integrated way. And so that's why I created a trauma informed framework and methodology around how do we really integrate these sophisticated systems to work together, so that we're not on this forever hamster wheel of trying. No cords, buddy. My puppy loves my cords over here. Um, we're often on this treadmill of like self development. This book, this potion, this crystal, this like modality, this session, and all of these things are good. All of them can be highly beneficial. I've tried so many of them. They've helped me so much on my trauma healing journey, right? And in order for us to really integrate and return to wholeness, which is what the root word of heal means, it's wholeness. So we're coming back to ourselves and integrating all of the different pieces, experiences, traumas, um, unconsciousness that we've experienced, integrating it back into our whole, creating like alchemy and creating this beautiful like mosaic of all of our experiences, of all of our um, experiences, right? And those include not so great ones, those include traumatic ones, those include childhood ones where we didn't always have the language, the awareness, the consciousness to make sense of it in a way where it could be digested, right? And integrated back into the whole. And so when we think about the whole, think about this beautiful, like, pastry, right? Maybe it's a gluten-free pastry, gluten-free, dairy-free. Um, Beautiful, amazing, gorgeous, yummy pastry. All of the ingredients separately are not that great. You might have your butter, might be vegan butter, right? The eggs, the baking soda, um, all of these things separately not great. Most people are not going to eat a spoonful of flour, a spoonful of butter, a tablespoonful of baking soda, right? Like, gross. All together, it makes this beautiful creation that is delightful. Oftentimes in our life, we have these individual experiences that are very challenging, that maybe don't make sense, that are really, for me and for many people I know, are fragmented. You're not even sure where it fits in your life, in your psyche, in your experience. They're little random pieces. When we're able to really heal and create integration, return to our whole selves, um, that are beautifully complex, we're able to share our own mosaic, right, of these experiences integrated. So much of what I think our industry is missing is deep integration. I love mindset work. It changed my life, it healed my life. I love different modalities. They're so helpful, right? They're so beneficial. Sometimes they can be as beneficial as therapy. I love therapy and I love coaching. And what both of them have to have is a trauma informed framework. And we don't always learn a trauma informed framework truly in graduate school. We don't learn a trauma informed framework, right, in coaching, because one of the biggest blessings and, like, magical unicorns is that coaching has so much freedom. The dark side of that, the shadow side of that, is anyone can literally do anything, any kind of way, and it's okay because there's no regulation. And so, with anything, we have to find the sweet spot between um, practical and ethical and safe and effective, right? And efficient, right? And I would say we have to add a healthy dose of integrity in there. So when we think about trauma informed anything, we're simply acknowledging that as humans, right, as beings, we're going to experience trauma on some level. Some of us have experienced more trauma than anyone should ever in 50 billion lifetimes, right? And some of us have experienced things that were definitely super challenging, but you might not consider it like lifetime movie. Hi, Nicole. Hi, my love. You might not consider it lifetime movie challenging. And many of us are all along that spectrum. And so, whenever we're talking about transformational work, whenever we're talking about creating beliefs, like Lawana said, uprooting beliefs, creating transformation, creating any kind of change, we're going to run up against resistance. Hi. We're going to run up against old neural pathways that don't want to be changed. We're going to run against our egos who are scared of change, and we're going to run into these younger, fragmented parts of our psyche that I refer to as parts, right? These parts of ourselves are going to often be resistant to change and resistant to transformation. And what that is going to bring up oftentimes is resistance, is old trauma, right? That's been kind of buried in our psyche, that's coming out through all sorts of symptoms, ailments, mental health symptoms, physical health symptoms, even kind of like a spiritual crisis, right? Many call it a spiritual awakening. All of these things are simply um, ways that our body, our organism is speaking to us. There's misalignment somewhere. Gabor Mate has a book called Hungry Ghosts, and it really talks about just that we have these fragmented parts of ourselves who are fighting for our attention, and they're fighting for it through all sorts of vices, all sorts of addictions, whether it's to perfectionism, drugs, sex, alcohol, gluten, spending, shopping, right? Perfectionism, gluttony, whatever it is. And I think we're all recovering from something. I think we're all recovering from something. um, when we have these hungry ghost parts, they're wanting to feed off of something. And until we can take dominion over these parts of ourselves and our own psyche and come into more alignment that really honors and validates our experiences, our traumas, our emotional injustices, it's hard for the brain and the psyche to really accept change because we have this internal conflict that's going on, interpersonal conflict that's going on. And so, Luana, you're so welcome. I'm so glad it's helpful. I told my friend years ago I wanted to be a whole person after she mentioned I did a lot of personal development. It's so true. That's so the goal. And sometimes we don't even realize that wholeness is the goal. It really is the goal. It's not one thing. Sometimes we think it's like a dollar amount or a certain weight or a certain like result. The partner, the fancy home, whatever it is. And all those things are great, right? I want us all to have those if we want those. But I think the real goal and the real like fulfillment is wholeness, Luana. That certainly was for me. And baby Luana is often frightened. Yes, we each have these little babies inside of us who are scared. They're not sure what to do. They're not sure where we are. They think they're still like 5 or 6 months or 12, um, or God forbid, 16 or 18, right? Like they feel like they are ages ago and that they're alone. So they're not quite in the past, but they're not quite in the present. It's like they're trapped in space somewhere trying to get our attention the best way they know how. And it's very, very challenging. So, usually, like little kids and puppies, I'm finding when they're scared or frightened, they tend to act out or shut down or go into one of our uh, trauma responses: fight or flight or freeze or fawn, also called appease, right? It's going to go into one of these um, drives to help cope. That's it. They don't mean us harm. They're not trying to like derail us, though sometimes they do. And sometimes they don't mean to take control of our nervous systems, but they can, trying to get our attention, like a little kid who's screaming because it's not able to talk yet with words. It's pre-verbal. And many of us had trauma, lots of trauma, significant trauma before we were verbal, and that trauma gets stored in our body. There's a renowned book that is actually quite good and quite helpful called The Body Keeps Score, which says what so many cultures know, that the body remembers even when the mind does not. The body remembers even what the body cannot process. And it doesn't always mean necessarily that it was a horrific trauma, though it could have been. Sometimes it was simply something that happened that was never processed, and our mind needs a narrative to go with something in order to process it. Without that, it needs some sophisticated practices and methods and consciousness, as we've shared, to be able to release and process and integrate without a narrative. We don't need a narrative to heal, but unless we embark on some other practices to help that healing process, the mind is forever searching for a narrative. And so we will go deeper into that in the program. And the reality is sometimes our bodies simply need support in releasing and healing, returning to wholeness, and creating deeper integration, right? Kind of like a Rubik's Cube. When all of those things start to click into the right order, we become free of so much of what holds us back. We become free of so much limitation, so much sabotage, so much symptoms that are challenging, and we are able to really tap into that place, that feeling, that knowing, that embodiment of wholeness. Like you said, Luana, it is so achievable, and it is so um, accessible to you, and it takes time. It can take time, and it takes a certain framework, mindset, awareness, heightened consciousness, right? Holistic consciousness to do that deeper work in ways that do not shut your system down, that do not overload it, um, and that can allow for healing and unraveling and deeper integration in kind, compassionate ways. Doesn't mean that it's going to be easy or walk in the park, but it can mean that you can move through it without stopping your life for 5 years to heal it all, right? And so I love that you're here and that you are in my world and committed to this work. If you're here, I know that you are. I love you so much. I would love to hear what your takeaway is from today. What are you committing to around maybe softening your relationship or dynamic with worth? Are you able to lean in to the truth that you are inherently worthy and nothing that has happened or will ever happen will change that, will decrease it, or minimize it in any way? And that you're able to reconnect with your worth anytime, and it can take time to move all of that sand off of yourself and return to that place of wholeness and worthiness. It's there. It's worth the journey, I promise. And I'm so grateful that you are here journeying alongside me. There's no place I'd rather be. I will be back tomorrow for more safe trauma practice. I'd love to continue the conversation. Luana says, I love that I can be gentle with myself as I heal. That feels good. You can be, and it's so needed. When we're not gentle with ourselves, is often when we cause re traumatization. And we're going to talk about that in a day or two. Um, Re traumatization. So, yes to gentleness, and yes to compassion and grace, and knowing we have a lifetime of things to unravel, and we are not going to unravel that in a couple of years, and sometimes not even in a couple of decades. It takes time, but the more gentleness that we can embrace often, the faster the healing process can be. And also, time is relative and kind of an illusion. So, all of that. I love you so much. I will see you tomorrow. Please feel free to share comments below. If you have questions, I'll circle back and answer them. And if not, I'll see you tomorrow for more safe trauma practice. Bye for now.